Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, in just a minute, our Morning Light panel will go behind the headlines. But first, the Colemans and your family, we had a fun weekend.
We did. We went to the gala with Wild Heart Ministries. There's a picture of us, all dressed up fancy.
No dancing. There was no dancing.
There was no dancing, but
but it was a good time.
The food was great.
I finished my plate. I noticed. Well,
we won't talk about that.
But go ahead, Debra. This is yours.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. An unplanned pregnancy can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Find out how a Pennsylvania pregnancy center is giving women the support they need. Plus, what is biblical stewardship? We talked to a Christian financial planner to find out.
Well, those pregnancy care centers have been in the news lately, and man, do they do incredible, compassionate work.
They do wonderful
Can't
work.
wait for that conversation. Well, President-elect Donald Trump's 10-point education reform plan calls for the return of prayer in public school. Now, it's unclear if the policy means teacher-led classroom prayer or reinforcing the right of individual students and teachers to pray. You can do that in school. A 1962 Supreme Court ruling prohibits school-mandated prayer in public schools, but something called release time allows religious education and prayer, here's the quote, as long as teachers and public money are not involved. So is this latest campaign for school prayer a good idea, a bad idea, or an idea whose time has come? What do you think, Debra?
I think it's both. I think it's a good idea, and it's a time where it needs to happen.
Culturally, in Pennsylvania, we've had Bible reading and prayer up until the late 40s, but not teacher-led school prayer. So it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting. Well, the sister of former New York Mayor Ed Koch died on Saturday, but the way 92-year-old Pat Koch Fowler died should at least make us think. Under the 2019 New Jersey Medical Aid and Dying Act, she paid a little under $7,000 for counseling and the lethal medication ending life at a date and time of her choosing. The law requires patients to have a terminal diagnosis of just 6 months to live. In an interview for her obituary, she told the New York Times, "I do not believe in an afterlife," which is so very sad. So where do we stand on full legalized euthanasia? And with few politicians opposing it, is doctor-assisted suicide inevitable?
Well, this is one of those issues that politicians don't want to talk about. It's very difficult. It's personal and has a lot of implications on how we care for or even view aging. So it'll be an interesting conversation in a few minutes.
Very sad.
Well, AI-generated images and videos of celebrities and politicians have become an easy way of making a point, but as President Donald Trump's popularity soars among Christians, marketers have found ways to convert his likeness into a Christmas bonanza. So how should we think about Christmas ornaments picturing Trump with, say, images of the likeness of Jesus? Is this trend a good one or a serious one? We'll take these questions to the Morning Light panel this morning, and we're honored to have a collection who's never been together on live TV. Together. Yeah, Matt Brouillette, glad to have you here.
Good to be with you.
Dr. David White, we often hear your sage, helpful advice. We hear all the time from our viewers about you're very helpful to them, so thank you.
Glad to hear that.
And Pastor Josh Robertson.
Glad to be
Hey,
here.
you're having an event tonight at your church, the Rock Church on Allison Hill, with
Dr. Cornell West.
Dr. Cornell West. I know some in our viewing audience say, Cornell West, the Cornell West, it's going to be him. And a Christian who has pushed back on the idea of wokeness in the culture, and someone who has different political views than, say, your last guest, who was Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. But it's going to be a good conversation. Looking forward to that. So the big question we're leading off with is this notion of school prayer. It has always been debated. It has always been an issue, and up until the last few elections, Republicans always had to say, hey, we're bringing back school prayer. Nothing ever happens. Matt, your idea of public school prayer, and I'm assuming that President-elect Trump may mean a teacher-led prayer or a principal-led prayer, or like in Oklahoma, the state school superintendent praying on a video.
Yeah, I think that this is a real challenge in our pluralistic society. Clearly, as we've moved away from our Judeo-Christian roots in our public school system, I think it creates real problems. And that's why my answer to this is no. What we need is more school choice. Mm-hmm. We need parents to be able to choose the school that better fits their religious preferences. Otherwise, I think we're going to restart all this. Well, whose prayer? Because our public schools are really teaching secular humanism. And if that's the prayers that we want, I don't think that that's what a lot of parents are signing up for. So to me, the answer is give parents more choices in the schools and the prayers that they will be praying at them, I think that that's how you solve that problem.
Dr. White, any different view on that or a nuance?
No, and I don't think any of us would disagree that we want to retain the right to worship and pray. We all want that. I think when I think about it, it comes down to, for the Christian, it comes down to motive. What is our hope? We look to the words of Jesus in Matthew 6, where he says, don't pray in public for the purpose of being seen. So the question that I have, are we doing that, or is our desire to pray at the flagpole, for example, to be seen?
Motive matters.
Motive matters, and rather than where Jesus says, "Hey, you got something to pray about? Go to your room, close the door, pray in secret, and the God who sees in secret will respond."
Pastor Josh, I saw this weekend that the superintendent I mentioned a second ago in Oklahoma is praying on YouTube, praying almost, it was a kind of a political message that he was praying. How do you align this with your desire to have people who learn about Jesus, pray to Jesus, have a relationship with Jesus, and having government kind of impose or provide this idea of a school-sanctioned school prayer?
Well, I think, as our panelists have said, I think the issue with that, I would love to see prayer in every institution, but we live in a society that we respect all faith traditions and backgrounds. So who is praying and what prayer? And so I think if we're going to mandate prayer, that's a tough ask when, we're respecting people from different faith traditions. So I would love to see maybe an allotted time or space for students to be able to pray.
Silent.
Yeah, something like that, but nothing that would be, from the teachers or the superintendent or...
That's interesting. Yeah, I think a lot has probably changed since that 1962 Supreme Court ruling. We've thought a little bit about formal public prayers and then what it actually means to pray and talk to God. Pat Koch Thaler, the famous mayor of New York, his sister just calls the New York Times and says, "Hey, I'm going to die on Saturday. Lethal injection, families surrounding." This has been playing out in Europe for some time. Dr. White, how should we be thinking about this? We often talk about the issue of life from the perspective of the unborn, but this is the other end of life. How should we view it?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to start with definitions. What is euthanasia? Euthanasia is the taking of a life for the purpose of resolving or relieving suffering. But then it breaks down further. Voluntary, yes, this is what I choose. Non-voluntary, you choose that for me because I can't make that choice. And then involuntary, which is murder. I'm going to take your life whether you want me to or not. We already embrace passive euthanasia, if you will, where we withdraw active measures that exactly. Like we pull the plug, so to speak. I just finished reading Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, and in there he really pinpoints the real point of struggle is that on the one hand, what we already do is we remove artificial means to sustain life. Where the controversy is should we interrupt natural processes that are sustaining life? Should I give a medication that causes the heart to stop and induces death? And that's where it gets scary. And I think we already do express some forms of active euthanasia or active taking of a life. When it's really difficult to see somebody in the last minutes of life, if you will, struggling to breathe. And we know they're going to die within a very short period of time, and so perhaps we increase the dose of morphine to give them comfort. But the interesting thing is that same morphine reduces their capacity to breathe. But I think in those moments of time, we feel that it's merciful and kind to relieve the suffering in those last minutes. The time becomes the issue, so do we do that an hour ahead, a week ahead, a month ahead, or 6 months ahead, which is now on the table?
So if you're a pastor, how are you, and someone comes to you and says, "Pastor, I want to end my life. I don't want to suffer anymore. The world is too hard," or "I know I'm going to die anyway"?
Sure. I think ultimately God is a God who is absolutely pro-life, and God wants us to live and trust in the sovereignty of God in order to usher us to that place of final rest. And so I would counsel a member of my church to endure suffering. I'll give you a short scenario. I had a member of my church who was suffering to the point of death. He was in the hospital, and he looked at his responsibility was to be an evangelist to the doctors, the practitioners, the nurses, the administration.
There's purpose in it.
Yes, that his job was to show them the gospel while he suffered to his death. And I think Christians can't avoid suffering.
Let me read you the quote that Pat says in the New York Times article from Sunday. I decided I'm 92 and I have lived a very, very rich life, a very happy life, and I didn't want to torture myself anymore. When you don't believe in God, when there is no final destination, it feels like that's where you may go, in that despair. Right? Let me get to the final one. And this is kind of a silly one, a light one. In the 1960s, it would not be unusual to see a picture of JFK and a picture of Jesus next to each other above an altar in a home in my old legislative district in southwestern Pennsylvania. Some still are hanging on the wall. But this latest trend, AI marketers say, hey, there's Christians out there, they'll buy this stuff, they love it. And so they're popping up on our feeds, images of President Trump kneeling to a Jesus-like figure, or Jesus putting his arms around President Trump. I tried to find some of President Biden. I didn't find this. Matt, your thoughts? Good trend, bad trend? Should we steer away from it?
I don't know if it's a good trend or a bad trend. I think the recognition that God ordains all leaders, that whether President-elect Trump or if it had been President-elect Harris, that God is involved in all man's affairs and that we should be praying for all of our leaders. I think that to me is the important thing, how we represent Christ. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of debate over that as well, right?
Right.
Should we be using images of Christ in that way?
Our church made
I
a
would
decision not
that's
to
not going
have
on
a
my
picture of
tree.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not going on my tree.
Even if I buy it for you?
Even if you buy it for me.
Dr. White, quick thought, 30
Well,
seconds?
if it was up to me, I think we should take that image of Jesus praying over Trump, insert ourselves in that picture, and let it be a reminder for us to pray for our leader, whether that was Trump, Biden, Harris, Obama, go through history, because I agree that God's ordination of leadership does not automatically mean blessing. And so we are in a position to plead with Jesus to intervene on our behalf, on the leader's behalf before God.
Beautifully expressed. So, the pastor, you get the final word today. Your thoughts on this trend?
Well, I absolutely categorically just disagree with any images of Jesus. I think we reduce him when we do that. The reality is he came in the likeness of sinful man to redeem us from the curse of sin and death. And I think we should be celebrating why he came, not an image of him. And I agree with you. I wish we could replace that picture with each one of us and say we're praying for whoever's in office. That's what the scriptures teach us to do. So I think we should just be Christian.
Very good. Well, thank you for this thoughtful conversation. We'll have you guys back tomorrow if that's all right. Thanks. Great. Well, thanks to our Morning Light panel for joining us. Coming up next in Morning Light, saving the lives of babies and the hearts of their mothers. Learn how a Pennsylvania pregnancy care center is supporting women facing an unplanned pregnancy. You're watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV.
On this date in November 1989, Pennsylvania Governor Robert Casey signed the Abortion Control Act into law, the nation's strictest abortion law. The legislation outlawed sex selection abortions, required spousal notification, required a 24-hour waiting period before obtaining an abortion, and banned abortions after 24 weeks of pregnancy, except in cases of extreme irreversible physical damage to the woman or to save the woman's life. Today, Pennsylvania allows abortions up to 24 weeks of pregnancy. Morning Star Pregnancy Services is committed to providing women with unplanned pregnancies an alternative. Joining me is Michelle Lorenz, the Executive Director of Morning Star. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
Tell us, what is Morning Star?
So Morning Star has been in the community for 52 years now. We are a medical pregnancy clinic, so we provide medical grade pregnancy testing, ultrasounds, abortion pill reversal. We employ registered nurses, sonographers. They do all of our ultrasound scans. We operate under the medical license of our medical director, and we also have volunteer radiologists that read all of our scans. Last year, we saw 3,551 clients. We provided 1,712 ultrasounds. We also provide non-judgmental counseling, material supplies, and post-abortion counseling. We also have an education department where we go into our middle schools and our high schools to talk to the students about healthy relationships. So hopefully, they would never have to utilize Morning Star services for an unplanned pregnancy. And last year, we actually reached more than 2,300 students in the community.
Oh my goodness, I know our church has partnered with you. What is the mission?
So Morning Star's mission is to empower people to make courageous, life-giving decisions. We walk alongside families in the community so they do not feel alone, and that because we want our families to thrive. Each morning, the Morning Star staff, we start out every day with prayer. We pray for all of our clients, and we pray that each one that comes through our doors, the Lord touches her heart, and the dads as well.
Talk to us about the people who are walking through your door, the families, the women.
So many times people feel like it's the teenage client that we see. And yes, we do see that, but the greatest population of clients that we see are ages 20 to 29, then 30 to 39, then 19 and under, and then 40 plus. So yes, we do see the teenage girls who are afraid to tell her parents that she's pregnant. But then we also see the college student that she just wants to finish her degree. We see the young couple and she doesn't want to walk down the aisle pregnant. And we also see the couples that just don't feel like they're financially ready yet. Also, there are the empty nesters who, they're done raising their families and they don't feel like they can do this again. And unfortunately, you do see the cases of infidelity and rape.
So certainly a wide range. No, what I really liked was that you just not only help people at that decision-making point, but you help them after the baby is born. Tell us about that.
That is true. There is some misconception out there that we only care about saving the baby. But no, we go much further than that. We provide support for the families long after the baby is born. So last year we provided over 5,000 material supplies to moms and dads. We provide clothing, blankets, food, formula, even little pack and plays if the baby doesn't have a safe place to sleep.
Wow, that is wonderful. What type of difference are you making?
So last year, 686 moms who were thinking about abortion chose life after receiving our services. Now, put that into perspective. That's like lining up 16 school buses and filling them with children. So that's the impact that Morning Star has made on the community in 1 year.
That is amazing. How does that make you feel?
It's terrific. I mean, it makes you feel like you're really making a difference.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I know that I'm sure donations are something that's definitely needed, so we have some information where people can give you donations, but continue doing the good work.
All right. Thank you.
And if you would like more information or if you would like to make a donation, check out morningstarclinics.com for more information. And coming up next on Morning Light, biblical stewardship should be a priority in our lives, but what does it really mean? I talked with a Christian financial advisor to learn how we can effectively manage what God has given to us. And good morning, Pittsburgh and the Heinz Memorial Chapel. Thank you for watching Morning Light. The idea of biblical stewardship is not new, but as Christians, we might not really understand the principle. Well, I sat down with Christian financial advisor Tim Slothower with Grace Financial Advisors to find out why stewardship is so important. Tim, tell us about Grace Financial Advisors.
Grace Financial Advisors is a registered investment advisor firm located outside Philadelphia, and we work to help clients who are Christians to align their finances with their faith. The Bible lays out principles, and we help clients apply them to modern finance. We work mainly with individuals and families in Pennsylvania, but we also work with some around the United States, both in person and virtually. I write a blog covering practical stewardship issues called The Thoughtful Steward, which is found on my website.
Why don't you walk us through how you help your clients?
It all starts with a conversation. We talk about where the client is currently and where they're looking to go. And it really examines all the facets of their finances, from their debt to their savings, to their giving, to their investment accounts, and really work to identify those goals that they would seek to accomplish, and then try to align the finances that the Lord has provided to help support them in reaching those goals. The whole process utilizes biblical wisdom to help people make wise stewardship decisions. And ultimately, as we all know, life happens and things change, including regulations and other circumstances in life. And so changes need to be made periodically. And so we try to stay on top of that to help people adapt to their changing circumstances.
Why don't you talk to us a little bit more about biblical stewardship?
Well, the best definition I've ever heard is that God owns it and I manage it. It covers the time, the talent, and the treasure that He's entrusted to us. And it's a wonderful responsibility to have because of the blessings that God has given us. The principles that are laid out in Scripture are universal, but the application is really left up to the individual. And that application can vary by person as well as over your lifetime. The way you handle things in your 20s may look different than in your 60s. But ultimately, at the end of our lives, we all have to give an account to God on how we have handled what He has entrusted to us. So the best thing I can say is that stewardship is not a destination, but a journey. And really, we need to be forever learning and growing in that stewardship responsibility.
And this journey is really important.
Absolutely. Money and possessions are the second most discussed topic in the Bible. And it's not because God needs our money, but because money can easily take the throne in our hearts. Jesus said in Matthew 6:21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." What we value, we end up worshiping. And our culture that we live in makes money their master, and that's what they worship. And as Christians, we're called to live differently. We should be making money a tool that we can use to glorify God and to help others. And so how we handle money and possessions not only impacts our relationship with God, but it impacts our relationship with others and gives us an opportunity to point others to Christ.
Yes, certainly some really good insight. Thank you so much, Tim.
You're welcome.
For more information on Grace Financial Advisors, go to gracefinancialadvisors.com. Stay with us. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. Good Morning York, where you can check out the Hanes Shoe House. Thank you for watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV. And there are two significant anniversaries happening tomorrow. The first, the Pilgrims landed in Cape Cod in 1620 in search of religious freedom. Plus, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his famous Gettysburg Address. We will take a closer look at both, and that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts?
Is it Gettysburg or Gettysburg? How do you say? I mean,
I say Gettysburg.
When we moved here, I heard people say Gettysburg a lot.
Gettysburg.
But, well, it's the Gettysburg Address, right?
Yeah, Gettysburg Address. And
well,
you're gonna go dig deeper into that one.
We are
Okay,
indeed. It's going to
great.
be a good segment.
Yeah, I love history. Can't wait to see it.
We'll see you tomorrow. Well, I didn't stay up Friday night, but maybe you did, and that's okay. Seeing a 58-year-old champ go up against a 27-year-old YouTube sensation is, if anything, as good as it comes for entertainment or distractions. We love distractions. But there's a reason we cheer for people who are, at least by some standards, a little past their prime. Because we don't want to be counted out when we hit those big life numbers, right? I mean, that's how we think about it. But how about this for truth? The book of Proverbs, let's dust off some wisdom, says, "The glory of youth is their strength, but the beauty of the aged is their gray hair." So I guess gray hair means you don't have to prove relevance with push-ups, how many you can do, or a good hairline. It means there's life and experience and even some mistakes. God uses all of those things, and hopefully a lot more grace for those 27-year-olds. Age means you've been kept alive with a message and a mission. You don't have to lace up the gloves for a midnight fight to prove your worth. So here's to the beauty of old age, to the beauty of being aged. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching, and hey, be sure to check on your neighbors, both the young ones and the older ones, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.